Hey, everybody. My name is Pete Sena. I'm a creative entrepreneur, and I'm about to be on the Online Prosperity Show. And I'm so excited to be on the Online Prosperity Show and talk about how I started my dream company in my college dorm room and went on to build that into a multinational company.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we've got an extraordinary guest who's navigated the realms of creativity, technology, and entrepreneurship. Pete, how are you doing, my man?
Doing good. Well, it's good to be here.
Absolutely. Now, for those that are meeting Pete for the very first time, he's the force behind Digital Surgeons, a creative consultancy that has not only weathered the storms of the digital marketplace, but has also thrived and evolved into an 8-figure powerhouse. Now, let's dive into Pete's journey so we can discover the secrets of his success, the wisdom that actually brings him to the show, and what it is that he can help you achieve, knowing that we are all coaches and consultants that are looking to create a business that's profitable and enjoyable. I think what Pete has to share will be of note. Now, Pete, welcome once again. Tell us a little bit about you and what actually inspired you to start Digital Surgeons. From what I discovered while snooping about it, it says that you started this business from your own dorm room.
Yeah. So great question. What I would say is that it's a pretty cliche phrase, but necessity is the mother of invention. And what I would say is I was a kid of the 80s, loved video games, loved coding, just loved creativity and design. So when I was a kid, I was designing, I was coding, and ultimately got a job working for a large sports marketing company. And they wanted me to sort of be either a developer or a designer. And I don't like the word or. I think that or is a limiting label for people. I really believe in and. So ultimately what that then drove me to do is to start my own company, because I believed that connecting design and creativity and technology under one sort of, concentric circle, if you will, I thought could really make for some magic. So, at that time, I was just a college kid. I didn't know my ass from my elbow. And some people think it was scary, but it wasn't. It's like, what did I have to lose at this point? It's like, I was either going to be in a job that I thought was not what I wanted to do, or I could start what I really wanted. And so I started what I really wanted. And the rest is kind of history.
Fantastic. A lot of people, like Mark Zuckerberg also started their businesses from the dorm and things of that nature. What was, college life like in the 80s, which really prompted people to want to create, more of these innovative projects? And did you have any role models at that time?
Yeah. So one, just a clarification for the audience, because I guess I look really old. I was born in the 80s. I went to school in the early 2000s. So just to kind of set the timetable. So at that time, I went to University of Connecticut, which is a state school here in Connecticut in the United States. And now we're pretty well known for our basketball championships because we've got a really good sports team. But at that time, really, everyone was out partying, doing the college thing, chasing wild nights. And for me, I was just sitting in front of my two screens, writing code and designing. I've always been like a self-taught nerd, really. And I've got a lot of interests, right? Like having ADHD definitely gave me this superpower of obsessing over topics and learning things. So I would say early on, that's really what college was like for me. Is most of the classes were not interesting to me. The ones that did interest me, I was obsessed with, like design classes, business classes, tech classes. So really, that's really a lot where a lot of the magic was born. So what I always tell people is, while people were out there, chasing, getting laid and, drinking, I was sitting there grinding, making stuff happen. And I'm really happy with those choices and how they kind of worked out for me.
Absolutely. And you did mention you had the ADHD. Was that diagnosed at an early age, or is it something that you just came across as you grew up?
Yeah. So it's funny. I really never did anything formal about it. Like I never got into medication or anything, but I found out right around college that I had ADHD. And really what it came down to was that a lot of business owners, I think, have this, even those who don't, which is this idea of shiny object syndrome, where it's like, you see something and like a squirrel, you run to it. So I think that some people were like, hey, have you ever been like tested for ADD? Back then they just called it ADD, but now it's ADHD, I guess, is the more kind of wide standing vernacular. But yeah, so that I did get tested for that. And that helped me to realize what made my brain a little bit different than some people's. And I think that that's been a superpower for me, which I didn't really know at the time.
Absolutely. But Pete, I'm also a kid that was born in the 80s, and I can attest to that sort of way of being, because we were brought up in the transition where, technology was really growing at a really fast pace. You would look at a phone, maybe we grew up around Nokia. By the time you put the battery in and started learning the keypads, they already had a new one coming up. And so you were like, wait a minute, do I need to keep this one, or am I already a little bit late? Now, would you say, that would have been ADHD, or was that just how the life we were living was super fast paced, that there was so many things for anybody to look at, and it was, it would actually be, remiss or to not actually look at all the fascinating things that were coming about? Because I remember in the same year we had the Palm Pilot and we had the flip phone, and it just was happening at a really fast pace.
Yeah, great question. Today we live in the distraction economy, and it's the distraction economy and the attention economy. And I think that everybody's chasing attention, and when everyone's chasing attention, it's really easy to get distracted. So I think when you're talking about the pace of innovation for, smartphones and connected technologies and that sort of thing, when you and I were coming up, I think that focus is a powerful thing, but it's also can be a bit of a paralyzing thing too, right? Where if you can't focus, like I remember when I was in college, and I'm a pretty open book, so I'll share this with people. Hopefully, I don't get chastised for it. But basically, like I remember in college, the first time I had like to study for an accounting exam, and I just couldn't focus. One, I just didn't want to focus on accounting; it wasn't interesting. I would much rather be like writing code and making cool stuff. But I had to study for this test. So a friend of mine who like went through the diagnostic, get all the thing, was like, "Hey, here's an Adderall." And I popped an Adderall pill, and I had never done that, but it was prescription Adderall for him that he had prescribed it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like so focused. I'm so locked in. I'm so ready to go. So I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was like, that's just like another friend of mine who was not the person who gave it to me. And he's like, that's not how your brain works all the time. I'm like, no, I'm like this all the time. And so then I realized like, oh man, like this is how most people's brains work, which is like really being focused, not being a squirrel distracted by a bunch of stuff. Now, again, 20, 30 years ago, slightly different world. We didn't have TikTok where you're flicking through one video every second, and your thumb is just on rapid scroll. Things took a little bit longer to load, right? On those Nokia phones, trying to send a text message was kind of crazy on those things, right? So I think, different world back then, but I go as far to say that because I think when we learn about how people look at the world and how we see the world, and if we see it differently, we can do really magnificent things. And I think that what I'm talking about is pattern recognition. And, I know a lot of your audience is coaches and consultants and entrepreneurs. As an entrepreneur, our job is to spot problems for real people and solve those problems. And I think that I didn't know it back then because I was just a college kid making cool stuff in my dorm room, but I was doing a lot, which ultimately became a really successful career in marketing and branding. I was just paying attention to patterns I was seeing. So that's, I think, like a one way to look at how I was seeing the problem a little bit differently back then.
Fantastic. I like the word focus that you used, at the beginning of your question or your answer there, because I think I read somewhere where Robert Kiyosaki makes focus into an acronym, and he pulls it out and says, follow one course until successful. All right. And then you literally went on and did that. And, you've alluded to your digital agency and things of that nature. Now, it is your mission to empower founders, with the work that you do. Now, how is it that you help them move from being trapped in the details to actually formulating a winning strategy? Because all of that, really requires, a massive focus.
It does. But I think more than focus, it requires clarity. And I think clarity in language and clarity in thought is the thing that I would say one of my superpowers is definitely being able to help people craft a clear strategy for what they're trying to say. Now, that sounds kind of like buzzwordy. So let me kind of unpack it for a second. So what I tell people a lot is that your story is your strategy. And ultimately, how you express that story, how you express that is how your strategy comes to life. So what I do a lot of times with CEOs and founders, and this could be like a person who started in a dorm room and raised capital from Techstars, all the way up to like a Fortune 500 CEO. And I work with both. What I tend to do is go through a line of questioning that helps someone get to the root of why they're doing it, right? So like, what is their deep why, their purpose, like what makes them different? What I always say is like your onlyness factor or your differentiating factor is something that can unlock massive asymmetric gains and growth for you. So I think when I think about the strategy, it's like really figuring out most entrepreneurs that I see, they're busy, they've got big ideas, they're big thinkers, but all that information lives here. So what we have to do is get that information out of here in our hearts and get it into a place that people can see, whether that's a landing page or a billboard or a campaign. But it's got to be a consistent message told in a way that people can understand it, that speaks directly to our customer or our consumer, whether that is like someone that you're trying to like find to become a mate and marry one day, or whether that's a customer that you're trying to get to buy your, ball on your direct to consumer website that you're selling, right? Like, so whatever that is, I think your story is your strategy and how you express it makes a huge difference, right? So what I didn't realize back then, because when I first started out, I was making a lot of web pages, right? We're talking about early 2000s when brands were shifting from analog to digital. This is pre-social media in a big way, right? So we went from, blogs and message boards and forums to websites to social media. And now everything's being AI created, right? If you fast forward to 2023. But I think that there's this interconnection. And because of which, like the more people put their stuff on the internet, right? The example I always give is there was a time where you had 3 television stations and everybody was fighting for airtime for 3 or 4 television stations. Now we have an unlimited amount of television stations, right? We've got our phones and our rectangles that take over our lives. We've got all these things that are trying to fight for our attention. So what does that mean? Well, one, it means it's hard to break through. It's really important to not blend in, and being different is a really powerful thing. And then what it also means is by being consistent in how you look, how you sound, how you feel, and what your message is, that makes a huge difference, right? When you see a specific color green, you know it's Starbucks. When you see a specific color brown, you know it's UPS, right? That's branding. But branding is not just fonts, colors, and logos, right? Branding is that space that you occupy in the hearts, minds, and wallets of your customer, right? So what I've been doing for 20 years is helping people figure out, what is that story? How do I tell that story to make people care? Where do I tell that story to make people care? And then how do all the things that connect together ladder up to what I call is your brand DNA, essentially. So I hope that kind of unpacks for the audience a little bit of a flavor of what I mean by that. And that's basically how I've spent the last 20 years of my life, is helping people figure that out, getting it out of here and into a place that makes people click and buy.
Fantastic. From what I'm understanding is you really sit down with your clients and help them determine what their actual market is, or who they need to sell that product to, and what sort of message are they going to be delivering to that market on a consistent basis. And then the media can vary, because based on what you've told me, you started off with websites that were a little bit static. Now we've gotten on into like a 3.0 medium where AI is reigning supreme. Now, in the whole process of you creating this, you started calling yourself a demand designer. Now,
Yep.
How does this sort of visionary role play a crucial part in this now 3.0 world of business we live in?
Yeah, no, for sure. I love that question. So I remember being in a keynote speech years ago, and we had just done a really successful campaign for Lady Gaga. And we won all these awards and we got so much attention because it was just creating so much revenue and so much opportunity. And I remember saying to someone, they're like, so what is it that you guys do? Like, we know that you did all that stuff, but like, what do you do? And I said, we design demand. And their eyes lit up. And I think as marketers, as consultants, we always have to look for the eyes light up moment when someone's like genuinely interested, right? Their eyes light up, they lean forward and they're interested. And I was like, we're just answering the question, right? But I was like, what do you mean by that? I was like, well, you know how like supply and demand works, right? The economy. And they're like, yeah, for sure. I'm like, well, it doesn't matter what your supply is. If your demand's high, we can create opportunity. And it's like, sounds really stupid, right? So then what I started to think about is, as a designer, as an entrepreneur, as a technologist, an engineer, I started putting my brain to that, going, okay, well, what is the systems that are required to design demand for a company? Like, what are the best and most proven marketing frameworks, the best and most proven creative frameworks, thinking frameworks? And I went on this quest. And again, you see some books behind me, but I've read hundreds, if not thousands of books over the past 20 something years. And now with AI, you can do that a whole lot faster, which is really cool. But moving forward, I started to look for, like, I was on this quest to find like the one answer that could solve all the problems. And I'll sort of fast forward, I'll save the audience thousands of hours of my vision quest. Ultimately, what it came out to is there's a simple set of like rules and principles that we can follow to get to the bottom of what we call action, right? Or the ACT toolkit, ACT. And what it really comes down to is, who's your audience? So you have to figure out how to figure that out. What are you communicating? So the C, like the message and communication. And then 3, what are the triggers and touch points? And by triggers and touch points, I mean, like, what's going to make the thing that a person is going to make them trust and buy from you, right? And is that a funnel with marketing? Is that having to taste the product if it's a food product or a beverage product, many of which we work with? Is it knowing that, like, like Prosper mentioned it, and as a result of it, like, this is the thing that I want to tie into? Like, that, figuring that out is a mix and a dance of talking to your client, which in this case is like a CEO or a CMO, and then more importantly, listening very deeply to their customers, right? So what I mean by that, well, social listening, survey listening, qualitative research, interview discussions, like observational design, like all these different things we bring to this toolkit. That's how we design demand. So ultimately, what I'm basically talking about here is, it's a mix of thinking and doing that leads to new possibilities for growth. And how it differs from traditional marketing or traditional advertising is that most traditional marketing follows a linear funnel. You might have heard of things like AIDA or, BAB or, PAS. Like, there's a million of them out there, and ChatGPT can answer it way faster than I could at this point. But what I think is special is understanding where you're meeting people, where you're taking those people, and then how do you sell that transformation? And so when I do that, when I sell that transformation, I call that designing demand. And that's what my teams at my companies do, which is they sit with our clients, and we've got analytical minds and creative minds and technical minds and relationship minds, and they all come together and they form a little bit of a superpower to kind of help the client figure out what that is. And then we use that to design demand. So what does that turn into when we do that and we do it well? It means more sales. It means more customers. It means higher lifetime value, which means the value that you get from that customer for the long haul that you're with them. It means increased customer retention, meaning that the customers that you have, less of them are leaving because you know why they stay with you or don't, right? Reducing churn, as they say in SaaS, software as a service. So I think that's what designing demand is. It's sort of plugging into what are the steps, the moments, the experiences, and the messages that matter to move people through that, from action to ultimately whatever you want them to do. So that's what designing demand is. And that's what me and my teams do. And I've designed and built a number of companies that are able to do that for people. And most recently, I've been working really closely with CMOs to help them build that function internally, because nowadays companies want to do more with less. Some of them want that superpower inside. They don't want to just hire agencies. So I'm able to kind of help them navigate that, speak their language, and build the teams to do it.
Absolutely. And I quite like that. And, just on that note, now I know where Lady Gaga got her meat dress idea from, because
definitely not me. I was not the meat dress idea, but I can take full credit for Gaga's workshop, because that's something that me and the team definitely came up with here.
Fantastic. And, speaking of workshops, you're also working with students at Yale University and you're also helping other people, just really, really in your way, contributing to young minds in the technological and entrepreneurial space. Now, just give us a brief outline of what actually motivates you to focus on being forward obsessed and actually leveraging, this design and technology to make this world a better place.
Yeah. So a long time ago, I don't even remember who shared it with me, but I learned this idea of like everybody should lead a full 3-act life. And I heard that. I was like, what does it mean to live a 3-act life? One, first part of your life should be about learning, right? Focus on learning, optimize everything for learning, learning, learning. 2, focus on earning. How do you then earn or take from all that learning that you had? And then 3, focus on giving back. Now, I believe that you should never stop learning. I want to just first say that to the audience. Full on growth mindset here. I never stop learning, but I did my learning. I worked really, really hard in my 20s. I honestly worked my life away a little bit. So nowadays, younger generations would look at me like I'm crazy. But when you love what you do, it's not work. It doesn't feel like work. I'll be honest. I mean, yeah, you work your butt off and it's hard. But when you have a sense of purpose, it means a lot. So spent my 20s and a good part of my 30s really learning and then earning. And now I'm at a point where I'm doing a lot of giving back. I've been really privileged. I've been really blessed. I come from a lot of privilege as well. Just I want to, say that out there, like as a white guy in this space, like there's a lot of privilege that I was born with. And, again, I'm grateful for it, but it took me a while to acknowledge that because we don't know what we don't know. So now why I give back? Well, I give back and I give back in a number of ways, from advising to investing, to doing philanthropy, to just mentoring. And a lot of times I'm not even charging for that, to be honest, and just giving it away. And the reason why is because I was a really introverted kid growing up. I was the first kid in my family to go to college. I was the first kid in my family to start a business, to go on to do something with that business. So I was a lot of firsts, right? I was the oldest son, whatever. So why does that matter? Well, it matters because I was a skinny, scrawny, pimply-faced kid that was super introverted growing up, right? I had the reddish hair. Everybody used to call me Pete and Repeat from Nickelodeon. And like people used to fucking dog me when I was a kid, right? So then what did I start doing, right? Started lifting weights, started getting strong, started getting big, started learning all these different life skills. Nowadays, geek is the new chic, right? Nowadays, it's so cool to be a geek. Back then, it wasn't, right? But no one was going to beat me up back then. Which is why I went and got my martial arts and got my lifting on, the whole thing. But why do I tell you that? I tell you that because I didn't have a lot of help. I didn't have a lot of mentors. I didn't have a lot of people that could teach me how to code. I learned how to code from books, reading books at bookstores and writing down code because we couldn't afford to buy the $70, $80 books back then. And there was no YouTube. There's no chat GPT answer this coding problem for me. So I was writing down software code in a notebook on the weekends. My dad would drop me off at the bookstore. I would write down a bunch of code, as much as I could do. And then I'd leave the book back on the shelf and I'd go home and then I'd get on my computer that my dad bought with an income tax check refund. We didn't have a lot of money coming up. And I would stare into that black screen and I would type those letters and those numbers and those symbols onto the screen, and then magic happened. So I had that privilege to be able to do that. So now I see a lot of kids today. I see a lot of young leaders today. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to translate the vision to action. I always say ideas without execution is just hallucination, right? It's just, you're just dreaming some up. So why I give back and why I want to inspire 1 million people to be more creative is we're all creative. Right? Every single one of us is born creative. You look at like a little kid, this is like my son's 2.5 years old, right? You look at a little kid, so creative, so curious. And then we go through school or we go through hardships in life and they beat the creativity out of us because they want to make us think in a straight line. And learning is not a binary thing. It's not a singular thing, right? So that's why I give back, because for me, if I just had somebody in my corner when I was 19 years old and first starting that first company, I would be doing crazy bigger things than I'm doing right now. And I'm doing some big things, but I'm not on my Elon game yet, right? One day I'd like to be at that level of impact, but like with a lot less asshole. That's what I'm hoping for. There's like big things with humbleness and humility. But yeah, so that's why I give back, man. I hope that's helpful. I hope that tells the audience what was going to be helpful for them.
Oh, absolutely. I viscerally believe we're here to live, to learn, and to contribute. So you've done all three, in order for you to live your best life, you have to learn everything that, pertains to living the best life, and then eventually send the elevator down, for those that are on their way up, just so that they too can have a happier existence. And don't, underestimate your achievements. I mean, you haven't gotten to the stage of, trying to break a window with a steel ball, but you've had over 100 million raised, for your client partners. You've witnessed and been a part of 20 plus exits and IPOs, and you've written 100 plus long form sort of articles. All of that is accomplishments that a lot of people, would only dream of, throughout their whole lifetime, and you're only just getting started from the look of things. Now, what sort of key lessons have you learned about success and sustainability in the business world, just predicated on, this level, of life and business that you have achieved?
Yeah. Couple things. One, revenue is the lifeblood of every business. If you have the ability to create value for a customer that they will pay for, you have a customer. If you have a customer, you can learn from that, you can grow from that, and you can build a business around that. And I think early on in my career, I focused so much of my time. So that's the first thing, is revenue is the lifeblood of every business. The second lesson I would say, which I learned far too late, is I focused a lot of my energy in my early years on soft skills and hard skills. And those are the skills like writing code and designing and doing UI UX and learning marketing strategy. When the reality is what I should have been working on as soft skills. I should have been working on emotional intelligence. I should have been working on leadership, understanding how people work, how people's psychology works, because the greatest leaders understand that it's not about what they can do, it's what they can inspire others to do. And for me, that's the second lesson, is like, if you want to make something special, you need to lead. And if you're going to lead, that doesn't always mean you're the one doing the work. That's the second lesson I've learned. I'd say the third lesson I've learned is your story is your strategy. And you have to really understand why you do what you do and who you do it for. What I always say is that the riches are in the niches. And the more you can focus on that niche, that unique problem that only you can solve better than anybody else, that immediately opens up your possibilities, because it takes competition to a different level. It drops your competition and it puts you in the pole position. So I would say differentiation is what unlocks delight. And I would say, like, the next big lesson that comes up for me is the importance of self-care. I worked my ass off and didn't sleep enough, didn't take good care of myself. And I ran into some pretty challenging issues as a result of that. So the last thing here is, as stupid as it may sound, make sure you're getting enough rest, make sure you're getting enough exercise, make sure you're drinking enough water, because it sounds trite. It sounds obvious, like you see like on Instagram all the time. But let me tell you, when you're dehydrated, overcaffeinated, and sleep deprived, and I was all three of those things, you end up in the hospital with heart palpitations or worse, right? So I'm lucky that I'm here having this conversation with you, that I figured it out, but it took me a long time to figure it out. It probably took me into my 30s to figure out the importance of self-care. And now I prioritize sleep like it's my most important meeting. I prioritize family time and spend time with my wife and my kid like it's the most important client I have in the universe. So I think those are just some of my key lessons from probably 20 or 30 years of being in the game. I'm just getting started, and that's why I want to give it back, right? Because I can imagine if you had that whole playbook and I could give that to my 19-year-old self, and imagine if I could give that to 10,000 19-year-olds right now that are as driven as me or more, what can they unlock in this world? How much change can they create for the better, right? You take that plus a little bit of AI, and don't even get me started on the AI topic. That's a whole other conversation we can have if you want in the follow-up. But like, it's about to get crazy awesome out there, but we have to lean into it, and we have to stop the fear mongering, right? And we've got to lead with love, not hate. And that's where I think that we can take this place to like the next era of greatness that I just don't think that we're thinking about right now.
Oh, I love that. You see, the thing is, all hard skills, usually somebody comes around with a system, process, or tool that can replace that. Imagine if you are the strongest, farmer back in the time and somebody came rolling in with a tractor. And, if you were a copywriter in the last century, somebody rolled in with, I don't know what they're using these days, but at the end of the day, you can see hard skills are usually easy to solve for because people don't like the monopoly that people tend to have by holding on to these hard skills. But the soft skills, like you mentioned, the emotional intelligence, really getting to understand people. And there's another soft skill that a lot of people don't even know these days, shaking somebody's hand in a way that they would actually remember who you are and what that handshake represented pretty much after that. So many people are, just because of maybe the pandemic.
100%.
The pandemic got people socially distanced, but the further you are from other human beings, the further you are from the bank. That is something that I've learned in the way that I've been growing up. And
I love that. Preach. I'm stealing that one. That's a good one.
And it is soft skills.
I'll quote you. Don't worry.
Yeah, it is soft skills that bring us closer to other human beings. The rest can be figured out by a pixel or an algorithm. Now, for those that are, looking to grow and have these, exciting future-paced or just really know about demand design, what's the best way that people can get a hold of you, Pete?
Yeah. So I'm Pete Sena on just about every social channel if you want to reach out to me directly. But what I would say is if you want to talk to the far more intelligent people that are on my team, just go to weareds.com. So weareds.com. And that'll take you to Digital Surgeon's website and you can learn all about the work that we're doing with our clients. We're always posting new content there and tell them I sent you.
Fantastic. Remember, Pete, when we started this show, we were talking about whiskey and you probably thought, this guy's an alcoholic or something of that nature.
Definitely not. I was like, let's have a drink. But then again, I realized it would take a 14 to 15 hour flight to make that happen. But maybe sometime soon.
Fantastic. But obviously, like I was saying that, for a whiskey beverage to be enjoyed, it has to have been sitting for, a considerable amount of time. So you've been creating your business. You are now like a fine whiskey that has matured. And let's say we're starting a whiskey business today. What can people expect in the next sort of 5-10 years, of your business, especially, or just Pete in general?
That's a great question. I would say in the next 5 to 10 years, my goal is to equip people with the thinking tools and systems that they need to be able to unlock their joy and fulfillment and success. So what that's going to be for me is like figuring out creativity and curiosity toolkits that people can follow, like really just simple things that people can do in their day. Like there's really like simple ones. Like good example is like the other day I was talking to somebody who was pretty upset and I stopped them and I asked them a question and I said, "Hey, are you healthy right now?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, is your family healthy right now?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, just want to stop there for a second and just be grateful for that because there's so many people who don't have that. What are 2 other things that you're grateful for? And they just said another 2 things. And they just in that one exchange of information, 3 things that they said they were grateful for. As simple as that sounds, again, this is not my thinking. This is like millions or thousands of years of people coming up with this, right? They went from like this to this. So I think that's a simple exercise. And the same way that I gave that simple like exercise everyone can do, you give gratitude, you get gratitude. We all love it, right? You feel better when you give it. You feel better when you get it, right? Those types of same simple frameworks I'm applying to business, right? So the same way that you described the handshake, right? What are some of those simple frameworks you can apply for how to get customers, how to retain customers, right? These are the kinds of things that I will continue to be giving away over the next 5 to 10, 20 years. Because my goal now is if I can start to plant those seeds, much like that whiskey that has to age or that wine that has to age in the barrel and become a fine wine or a reserve wine. It's those, what makes a fine wine a fine wine? Most people don't know this. It's actually struggle, right? They say tortured vines make the best wine. Well, what does that mean? It means that productive struggle, just enough of the right struggle, not too easy, but not too hard. It's like a Goldilocks, right? If it's balanced just right, it unlocks that magic. So what I'm trying to do, like the whiskey or the wine or whatever metaphor we want to use, is I want to keep giving those tools away. So what you can expect from me 10 years from now, if I'm lucky enough to be here and be healthy and all that, is continuously adding creativity and adding problem solving and adding what I call divergent thinking into people's playbooks, because that's where new possibilities happen. It's like when we ask different questions, we get different answers. And that's what I'm going to continue doing at a personal level, at a business level, at a societal level for the next 5, 10, 15 years. And what I would say is if I fast forward in terms of society, what do we know is going to be true 10 years from now? We know that chips will be smaller, the internet and technology will be faster, we'll be sending information much quicker. And the thing that I think people have to worry about more than AI or AGI taking over the world, they have to worry about their own limiting beliefs. And that's the place I think you should start is don't start focusing on outside, start focusing inside. Because when you work on yourself, anything else is possible. And that might sound a little bit hokey, but let me tell you, as someone who's done a ton of self-work, who's gotten a bunch of coaching and who gives a bunch of coaching, what I will tell you is the one thing that will not change is change itself. So lean into change because it's the only constant. And if we do that, then you can prosper and take things to the next level. And I'm certain of that. That will not change no matter what else happens on the planet.
I love that. I love that. Well, I'll let you know that I think because they say every 2 years chips are getting smaller and smaller and containing bigger and bigger, data and everything else. I think by the time that time arrives, chips will no longer be existent. They will now just be replaced by air, and we can now just be getting our information from like some cloud or something like that. But
what's super funny, just a side point that you might be interested in if you're into this stuff. There's an incredible scientist. Her name is Neri Oxman, and she's done a lot of work with MIT. And I would highly recommend anybody who's interested in like biosynthetics and those kinds of things, look into Neri Oxman, because what she's done, her team's done with just nature-based design is incredible. To your point, it's like if you think about like nanoparticles and how new material sciences and additive manufacturing, like these are like paradigm shifting behaviors that go way further than just a science fiction movie of chips getting installed in your head. It's really comes down to like, what is the new surface of information, right? There's technology out there that is like, we're storing information on like biological things that is not just a, regular hard drive, right? Like this is a 4 or 5 terabyte hard drive or something, 4 terabytes, I think, right? You have information in this tiny part of your brain that has, 1,000 of these hard drives. So that's where I think things are going to get really interesting really quick, but the same principles apply, right? Inputs drive outputs, outputs drive outcomes, right? If you can master the input output outcome loop, almost anything's possible. So that's where I get excited, because it's like all the answers are all around us, like the universe and our understanding of it, like math, science, the arts, like this is where we can unlock the secrets to success and the secrets to like a different reality that we're living right now. So that's a whole other conversation, but I'm happy to take it there another time with you.
Absolutely. And I know so much is being trialed out. I heard in the future you just plant a tree and that becomes your server. You know what I mean? Things of that nature. So we never know where this is all going to lead to. But there we have it, folks. A very fascinating journey with Pete Sena, the mind behind Digital Surgeons. I think we actually dissected everything digital, AI, and the future with the finest scalpels that we could on the Online Prosperity Show here today. We've explored the evolution of his creative consultancy, his impact on the digital marketplace, and he has confirmed he's not behind the meat dress that Lady Gaga has been seen wearing out there. And we've also explored the principles that actually drive him. Now, Pete, I can't thank you enough for the time and the expertise that you brought to the show today.
I appreciate you. And all I would say to anybody that gets value from this now or in the future is like, just let me know how this helped you, because that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me showing up here. It's almost 7 o'clock at night here on a Wednesday when we're recording this here, my time. And I'm just like so excited, right? Because I'm really hoping that just one person takes one of these things and it helps unlock something magical in their life. And I believe that's possible. And that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. So if you are that person, if you hear that feedback, just let me know. I'm on Twitter, X, LinkedIn, all the platforms. Just literally shoot me an emoji or something so I know that you're out there listening.
Fantastic. And if you're a coach or consultant or founder that's seeking a winning strategy, I think Pete is your go-to guide. I will put all the details that he's mentioned in the show notes, and I urge you to connect with him and the wizards at Digital Surgeons to unlock your transformative possibilities that actually lie ahead. Until next time, this has been Prosper, and we're signing off the Online Prosperity Show. Stay inspired and keep thriving. Bye for now.